Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is SportsIQ with Larry Smith.
Man, I can't believe it's the weekend already. SportsIQ, Larry Smith, good stuff coming up here in the next hour. Ely Sussman talking a little Marlins. Yeah, we've talked about them. They had the big run back before the break, have fallen off since then. Can they find their mojo here in the dog days of August? Producer Tony's to talk with him here in a couple of minutes. And then a bit later, a team that should not be forgotten about in the Big Ten because they've been maddeningly consistent. Why did I try to say that word? Is the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And Randy Johnson joining us for the first time on the show, talking about the Golden Gophers up there and where they fit in this Big Ten conference now that has seen the emergence in the biggest way of Indiana. Obviously, Ohio State's still there. Oregon, many think, have the goods to win it all this year. Michigan's always around. What can some other teams accomplish? And so we'll get hear from Randy about that coming up as well. So today, 7th of August. By the way, before we get to birthdays on the 7th of August, happy birthday on the 6th to our producer Tony. Happy birthday. Slap me around for not mentioning it yesterday when we talked birthdays. But anyway, he's a modest guy. Didn't want to bring it up as we were going through. I get that. I'm the same way. I will not announce when it's my birthday. That's not going to happen. So anyway, producer Tony, happy birthday, man. Great friend, and glad you had a good time with your wife, Linda, out at dinner yesterday. Okay, so get to birthdays today. August 7th, the four-time gold medalist, Sydney McLaughlin Leveroni, she turns 27. Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts, 28. Vikings quarterback Kyler Murray is 29. Mike Trout, the three-time American League MVP, turning 35 today. Sidney Crosby, Sid the Kid, three-time Stanley Cup champ, 39 years old. How about Alan Page? He's the 9-time Pro Bowler, later an associate judge in the Minnesota Supreme Court, a star of the Vikings defensive line, 81 years old today. If you have a birthday on the 7th of August, you share it with Don Larson, born in 1929, still the only pitcher to throw a perfect game in the World Series, and Akili Bikila, who he was born back in 1939. He was the Ethiopian barefoot marathoner, won gold in the Olympics in 1960. So there you have it. Happy birthday to you and everyone else who may or not be listening. Okay, let's get a quick recap of a very busy Thursday on the Diamond. The Red Sox just keep finding ways to win these days. 8th straight victory, 10th in their last 11, a 12-11 win over the White Sox in 13 innings. A lot of numbers there. Game lasting over 4 hours and featured 9 different Boston pitchers, 8 different White Sox hurlers, making 17 pitchers in all on the mound combined. Brian Bello working the final 2 innings to get the win for Boston. The Red Sox now just a half game behind the Yankees for second place in the AL East. The Braves also won their 8th straight, beating the Marlins 11-3. Recently activated Ronald Acuna seems to be rounding into form for Atlanta. He was 2 for 5, 2 homers, 3 RBI on the day. Matt Olson blasting his 32nd long ball of the season. Christopher Sanchez became the first 15-game winner in the majors this season. Bryson Stott had 2 of Philadelphia's 8 doubles, and the Phillies beating Washington 7-3. The Phils' 5th win in the last 6 games, still 8.5 behind the streaking Braves in the NL East. The Brewers continue to have the best record in the majors. Milwaukee beating the Pirates 5-2 Thursday. It was Dustin May's first start for the Brew Crew since being traded from the Cardinals at the deadline. May gave up 2 runs and 3 hits in 6 innings, walking 3 and striking out 5 in his 97-pitch outing. Okay, more news a bit later in the show, including some surprises for the U.S. women's basketball team as they get ready for the World Cup later this month. Also, pro football is back with the Hall of Fame game Thursday night. Time now for today's moment of awe, and this one really takes our breath away, even today, let alone back in 1991. To run the 100-meter sprint in 10 seconds is impressive, but as sport, technology, and training have evolved, it won't even earn you an Olympic medal these days. In fact, in the 2024 100-meter finals at the Olympics, all 8 finalists ran a sub-10-second sprint. But imagine if you could get all 4 sprinters in a 4x100-meter relay to run their split not just under 10 seconds, but under 9.5 seconds. That was what the American sprint team did on this day in 1991. Carl Lewis, Mike Marsh, Leroy Burrell, and Dennis Mitchell setting a world record by running the 4x100 in just 37.67 seconds in Zurich. That shattered the world record the U.S. team had tied just 4 days earlier in Monaco. The U.S. would then set another world record a month later in Tokyo, and again a year later at the Barcelona Olympics. That world record would stand then for 16 years. An impressive run that truly gets our moment of awe.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Sports IQ with Larry Smith continues right now here as we're hoping you enjoy this first full weekend, if you will, Friday, Saturday, Sunday here of August. Producer Tony has our first guest for today's show.
Well, thanks so much, Larry. And, baseball season is, we are in the middle of the dog days of August, trying to separate contenders from pretenders. Got a lot of teams locked up in some middle races going on right now. Today, we're lucky enough to be joined by Ely Sussman. He is the founder of Fish on First. Ely, welcome to the show. Let's talk about these Miami Marlins. How are you doing?
No, I'm doing very well. Happy to be on. It's the first time this year that I've heard dog days, and I wouldn't say we're quite there yet. After the trade deadline, there's still a bit of a high and I would say it's, at least from a fan's perspective, maybe the players feel different, but there's still an intellectual, there's a whole lot going on in my mind in terms of ingesting what just happened. So I'd say we're a week away from the dog days. I'd say next week is when we're really there, but I think I speak for a lot of people that these are still fascinating times, especially in this particular year where so many teams are alive. I think that a lot of players themselves are still very much engaged and feeling at their best until we get a little bit deeper into August.
We didn't see a lot of movement with the Marlins at the break. Did trade away Liam Hicks. How would you rate that from a Marlins fan's perspective? Was that a good deal to move on from Liam at this point?
It was certainly the most polarizing move that the Marlins made on the deadline. They made all their moves on the deadline day itself. And Hicks was, given the year that he's having, understandably, there's mixed emotions there. As a guy that was, frankly, just found money for this organization, the expectations relatively low when they acquired him as a Rule 5 draft pick after the 2024 season. And I guess, long story short, I would say that it was the appropriate time to sell high through no fault of his own. It was more so a reflection of where they are as an organization at the catching position, that they've had this emergence of Joe Mack as not only their catcher of the future, but they are now fully confident with him as their catcher of the present, even though he's several years younger than Hicks. Just such a standout defender who also shows quite a bit of upside as a hitter in terms of, especially in the power department. And I'd say that was the biggest factor above all else, is just recognizing that they wanted to continue to use Mack on close to an everyday basis. And that Hicks himself, although very well-rounded offensively this year, still has a lot to be desired defensively. So it was just a bit of a square peg in a round hole situation moving forward, where they still liked his bat. This is a team that really shouldn't be in the business of taking for granted guys that put together such great quality at bats and can drive and runs in so many different situations. But at the same time, defensively, it was unclear where he was going to fit. And I think there's a real likelihood that this is going to be the best season of his career. They felt that they were selling relatively high. And even though they went more with quantity over quality in the return, getting 3 players, none of whom are especially reliable moving forward, all of whom have a bit of rough edges around them. Overall, I was in favor. I would say that I really understood what they were doing here, and they saw an opportunity to get, to address several different areas at once in that kind of deal, and they pulled the trigger on it.
Well, they're right in the thick of the wild card race there in the National League, middle of that NL East divisional race at this point in time. And what I like looking at this team is, you look up and down that lineup, there's a lot of youth. There's a lot of guys who are just now starting to get to some potential, and some that still have some ways to go. So this is a team that, if you allow it to stay together and kind of grow from where they are now, has some real potential, especially on the offensive end.
Well, you're right about that. And the fact that there really is nothing resembling a traditional veteran offensively on the position player side. Entering this year, the only player at all that was even into his arbitration years was Christopher Morel, and he ended up being the weakest link for them on their entire lineup. And so he's been released since then and is no longer in the picture. And even he was like 26 years old or so. So it is incredibly young, incredibly inexpensive for the team. And due to their performance, it's going to be significantly more expensive in 2027 if they keep the group together. A lot of guys that are going to earn well-deserved raises for their production, but still in the grand scheme of Major League Baseball teams, they would still be in a pretty privileged position there. There is no urgency for them to move anybody unless they found the right deal. And as I explained with Hicks, like that was somewhat of a unique situation that had more to do with his defensive fit than any sort of offensive concerns with him. So now what they have left is it is a pretty deep group where I think you have to start with Otto Lopez having an incredible year. He'd been leading the National League in batting average for most of the year and is still very much in contention for that while playing a good shortstop. And of course, Kyle Stowers, who was their all-star in 2025. And then this year he's been almost as a comparable hitter the last month and a half or so after a slow start. So I guess it starts with them, but there's a lot to like at the big league level, and they do now have quite a few guys knocking on the door at AAA. One of their other trades was getting rid of Connor Norby, who at this time just a year ago was seen as a pretty integral piece of their future. But he in this competition for playing time, like he kind of fell behind a little bit with his approach and with his inability to tap into his power. And now they have a long line of guys that are either on their major league roster right now or looking for an opportunity down the stretch. And it's a relatively good problem to have for this team to just have a lot of candidates at several different positions.
Absolutely. You look, I'm just going over some of their stats the other day, and I see a lot of asterisks in the lineup of so designating guys as rookies. I mean, I think that's a great issue to have when you've got a group growing up together all at the same time. If there's one thing that possibly that I think they need is, and you kind of hit on it a little bit, that they don't have is that veteran presence, like somebody in their early 30s, maybe a bopper bat in that big role, somebody you can anchor that cleanup spot to and just kind of allow the other kids to kind of grow around him. Is that something they may try to pursue when we get to the off season here this year?
It's a great question. It's something that it felt like they could have pursued last offseason. That seems like a pretty apparent need. I think speculatively from a bit from the outside, it seems like they were a logical fit for several guys. And I mentioned Christopher Morel. He was actually their most expensive free agent signing on the position player side last offseason. And it was somebody that was just very volatile and coming off a poor year. And there were alternatives at his position, alternatives at first base that were on the market. I remember last offseason, Ryan O'Hearn was one example that just checked a lot of boxes, was available on a relatively short-term deal. He goes to Pittsburgh. As we're speaking now, he has an injury, but he's actually been, when he's been healthy this year, he's been almost exactly what the Marlins kind of have been missing, both on and off the field from that kind of role. So, there are players like that available every offseason. And with the Marlins, it's just the financial aspect can't be ignored. The fact that this is probably going to be the second year in a row where they have the lowest payroll in the entire sport. And I've had the owner of the team, Bruce Sherman, on my own podcast less than a month ago. And he continues to say very ambitious things about being ready to spend when the time is right and feeling very good about the financial health of the organization. And yet you just don't see it translate to major league player payroll. They're spending it in other areas with their infrastructure, with their analysis and adoption of technology, but not directly on players that have resumes that merit a certain level of spending. And so now we're heading into 2027. The big uncertainty is what exactly the spending rules are going to be across baseball, depending on if there is a certain salary floor that the Marlins will have to get to reluctantly. Then that would seemingly open the door for them to make one of those kind of acquisitions, whether it is via free agency or via trade. And it's just hard to anticipate because also the other angle of that is the Marlins have just been so unsuccessful historically when signing free agents. A lot of players that were well-intentioned that they've brought in at market value have just been busts. And it's a combination, a little bit of bad luck and certainly some, I would say, some decision-making issues at the time where prioritizing some of the wrong things. So that's kind of the other side that I understand is that when they have tried in previous iterations of this team to spend on those guys, whether it was a Jorge Soler just a few years ago, Avisail Garcia around that same time, these were players that Garcia in particular is somewhat of a cautionary tale, a player that just wasn't healthy and wasn't able to sustain what he had done with previous teams when he came here. So from those experiences, they are understandably a little bit gun shy about spending even on guys that look good on paper, but for whatever reason, they have had bad experiences when trying to add experience and just proven veteran talent that way.
You said you had the owner of the Marlins on your podcast. I'm sure you've spent time talking to some of the players. We know what's happening on December 1st, right? It's probably going to be a lockout. I think that's almost assumed at this point in time. Having talked to both groups, where do you think we are as far as one side or another being able to convince the other side to move a little bit? Everybody has their position. The players are on this side, the owners are on this side. Hopefully they can find middle ground to come to compromise and make sure that the 2027 season gets played in full. Being around the Marlins, what is their take? What is the Marlins take, between players and owners on the CBA talks going on right now?
They do have one of their players is on the executive player subcommittee. That's their closer, Pete Fairbanks. He's one of 8 players that's currently on that committee, and so his perspective is, I think it's valuable and worth noting. Although I'll just preface it by saying he's in a different stage of his career than most of the players on the team. Most of the players on the team are so young and inexperienced, whereas he is somebody that they did sign just in free agency, and he's poised to be a free agent again. So I would say that his priorities are a little bit different than the rest of the team. But him in particular is somebody that has fallen in line with the leadership of the Players Association, in that they are just very determined not to have any sort of ceiling set on what spending can be, given that is what has distinguished this union from the other major North American unions, is that they've been able to leave that door open to receive as much money as that player merits on the open market. And that is what owners are fundamentally ready to trying to change about the sport, in some ways, just to control themselves in order to prevent bidding from getting out of control for some of these players, that in ways that occasionally do wind up with these albatross contracts. And that if they're able to install this rule that still that prevents them from just taking an extra wrong step and ill-advised transactions, just to trim away some of those while keeping most of the other things that they've enjoyed and that have enriched them very well. And they're going to do that. But yeah, just generally speaking, to other players in general, I don't think they're necessarily living and dying with the idea of being anti-salary cap. I think they just realize overall that the sport is in an extremely healthy place, and that even if there is a salary cap, these players are going to be very well compensated overall, and that the sport is just in a really good place from a revenue perspective, and that it would be just certainly on the player's side, difficult to imagine losing an entire season. And I think that is my just general feel is that we're going to land somewhere in the middle, where it's going to be a very long and slow negotiation, but they end up finding some sort of compromise that salvages most of the 2027 season, just because it doesn't do anybody any favors to actually have a huge gap in this sport when a lot has changed for the better, when the quality of play is so high, and when, like I said, even regardless of what exactly the format changes and what particular rules come into play, I mean, there are already some rules that almost do create that deter teams from spending at too high of a level. And on the low ends, even though there's a big disparity between teams specifically like the Marlins and the biggest market teams overall, there are some obvious incentives to spend a certain amount of money just because, just to win. Just understanding that there is, in recent history, I've been talking about this with my staff recently, just the history that if you fancy yourself an actual championship contender, you have to be at least middle of the pack in spending. The teams that are below that simply do not go super deep into the postseason, even if they make it on a regular basis. So in that aspect, it doesn't feel like there has to be any sort of dramatic overhaul with the way that this sport is run, but it is time to renegotiate these things. And at least for the time being, both sides of the equation, both teams are talking in ways that are they're talking about taking very hard stances for the time being, and we'll see where things actually go from there.
Yeah, somebody who covered the '94 strike when I was at CNN, those positions were set in stone long before we got to the strike time of that August, and we knew it was going to be ugly. And I don't feel that around Major League Baseball right now. Eli, I want to thank you so much for taking some time and joining us. Ely Sussman, he is the founder of Fish on First. Check out the if you're a Marlins fan or if you're just a baseball fan, check him out there online and find out some great information about the Marlins. Thank you so much, Eli. We appreciate you taking some time and coming on board today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
We're going to take a quick break on the Sports IQ, but we'll be right back after this.
Do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call. Because the best prices on airline tickets are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. They have access to great prices and discounts with over 500 different airlines, plus 300,000 hotels and rental car companies. Their prices are too low to publish online. The only way to learn more is make a free call. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next trip. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find the best prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next trip.
Welcome back here to the show. Just a reminder, be sure to follow us on YouTube. Larry Smith, it's SportsIQ LS, SportsIQ with Larry Smith. Be sure to give us a follow on there. More news on and off the court Thursday in the WNBA. Off the court, Team USA announcing their roster for the 2026 FIBA Women's World Cup taking place in a few weeks. Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers, Angel Reese, and Aaliyah Boston will make their debut in a major international competition, joining veteran stalwarts Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, and Nafisa Collier, among others on the star-studded roster. Joining them as well, Kalia Cooper, also Ryan Howard, Kelsey Plum, and Jackie Young, and Chelsea Gray, those last two from the Las Vegas Aces. A few notable players who did not make the cut for this year's squad. Kelsey Mitchell from the Fever, playing as well as any American guard right now, but has never been on the roster for a major 5-on-5 international tournament and was not part of the most recent Team USA training camp. It's too bad. She's fantastic. Rookie standout Olivia Miles, who's in the running for both WNBA Rookie of the Year as well as Most Valuable Player, also left off the squad. Miles, a guard, Team USA has guards right now. Those veterans, Kelsey Plum, she's 31. Chelsea Gray is 33, both on the roster to go along, of course, with the youngsters Clark and Beckers. On the court last night, the Fever taking on the Aces. Indiana out shooting Vegas 46% to 41%. They made more threes than the Aces. They took more free throws than the Aces. But in the end, it was Chelsea Gray who stole the show. Gray made two buzzer-beating three-pointers after Caitlin Clark's uncharacteristic mistakes, the first to force overtime, the second to give the Aces the 86-84 victory over Indiana. Rough night for Caitlin Clark, who missed two free throws with 7 seconds left in regulation. Indiana was up by 3, then lost the ball with 7 seconds to go in overtime. The Fever a point ahead. Clark, 20 points, 8 assists, but also 8 turnovers in the loss for Indiana. Ray Burrell scored 17 points. Erica Wheeler had 4 in a game-ending 8-0 run. The Sparks ending Minnesota's 10-game winning streak, beating the WNBA leading Lynx 89-82. Caleb McBuckets hitting a three-pointer to give Minnesota an 82-81 lead, but the Lynx missed their last 7 shots and went scoreless over the final 453. Pro football front, Hall of Fame game in Canton. None of the starters for either the Cardinals or Panthers took part in the contest. Still a very entertaining night to start off this preseason. By the way, speaking of, first off, the Pro Football Hall of Famers. They highlight the men who were in center stage, and the night is all about them. The class of 2026, the great San Francisco 49ers running back Roger Craig, Drew Brees, the record-setting quarterback from New Orleans, Larry Fitzgerald Jr., the great receiver with the Cardinals. Also, Adam Vinatieri, Luke Kuechly as well. His Panthers team taking on the Cardinals team of Fitzgerald in this one. And of course, the stories in the game like this, always rookies trying to impress their new teams, vets who may be looking for one last chance to make a team and help during the regular season. How about the Arizona rookie quarterback Carson Beck? Great first impression on new rookie head coach Mike LaFleur. Beck, a third-round pick out of Miami. Of course, he started his career with Georgia, completed 15 of 19 passes for 188 yards and a touchdown, showed good command of the team, made some good decisions when things weren't there. The Cardinals' other rookie QB is Caden Slovis. Not too shabby either, playing in relief of Beck. He completed 9 of his 10 throws for 106 yards and 1 score. On the other sideline, Haynes King, the rookie from Georgia Tech, did all he could to impress the Panthers coaching staff. King, who is the ACC Player of the Year last year, while with the Yellow Jackets, was 21 of 34 for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns. He ran for 39 yards and the winning score as he dove into the end zone as time expired for the 33-30 win for the Panthers. One veteran running back also getting to show his wares to the Panthers staff in the game. A.J. Dillon, the former Packers running back, 3 carries for 18 yards and a touchdown. But what a great night in Canton, Ohio. Of course, that's where it all began back in 1920 in the automobile showroom, where some guys got together and said, let's do a pro football league. And this is what has come out of that. Great to go back to Canton, where the Pro Football Hall of Fame museum is as well, if you will, the actual structure. Be sure to visit that. Be sure to try to get to a game as well at some point here. It'd be pretty cool too. Hey, one more note to get in that we didn't get in earlier in the week as we got busy. We heard earlier from Lincoln Riley, the USC coach, lamenting he wants to see the Notre Dame series resumed with USC. Well, it will. In 2030, they'll get back on the pitch, the Trojans and the Irish, the great rivalry. By the way, the Indiana-Notre Dame series, meanwhile, is being discarded. So there you go. All right, more conversations up next. SportsIQ with Larry Smith continues right now as we jump over to the Big Ten and talking for the first time. Excited to talk to him. Randy Johnson. He is the Minnesota Golden Gophers beat writer for football and basketball for the Star Tribune up there in Minneapolis. Randy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. First things first, how's the weather in the Twin Cities right now?
Well, it looks like about sunny and 85 today, so it's pretty much a perfect summer day here in Minnesota. I can't complain at all.
Awesome. It's one of our favorite, the Twin Cities, my favorite places to go. So many great memories there. Obviously, you go back when I went years ago for the first time was back in the 80s. Had to go find First Avenue and 7th Street entry, of course. Didn't quite match.
Still going strong.
No, is it still open? That's great.
Oh yeah. It's a standby. It's a legendary place.
Yeah. Wasn't quite as glamorous as the movie Purple Rain, but anyway, I digress. Gophers football right now. The Big Ten. It's funny how we have gone from being the Big Two, Michigan, Ohio State, to now Indiana's jumped in. Obviously, Oregon coming in. Talk first about coming out of Media Day and going into this 2026 season. Just how the Big Ten suddenly is much deeper now than it was even just a few years ago.
Yeah, I think obviously adding the 4 teams in the West Coast that up things a bit, and then you have the the rag to riches turnaround for Indiana football, which who could have predicted that? I still remember last time Minnesota played out there, it was in 2021, and it was the next to last game of the regular season, and the Hoosiers I think were about 2-8 at that point, and it was Memorial Stadium was just half empty, and it just was, there was no vibe whatsoever, and you could knock me over with a feather to tell me that 5 years later they'd be undefeated national champions with the Heisman Trophy winner. So I mean, it gives other teams hope, I guess. Teams have been downtrodden. Look what they did. Look what Indiana did. If you get the right people aligned, the right money, the right transfers in, obviously, the right coach, and if everything goes well, it's been a 2-year deal too. So it's just not a 1-year thing. So there's been at least 2 years of sustaining power in that.
Yeah, I think most of us kind of said, well, okay, after year 1 of Kurt Cignetti, well, show us you can do it again. And he did. He said, hold my beer. And like you said, went undefeated, national title, Heisman Trophy winner. Like you, I still, on the show, every time I mention Indiana football national champion, I still have to pause and reflect and say, I can't believe I just said those words in the same sentence. But you know what? Kudos to them. the Kurt Cinetti effect there. Don't you think this is also, and I want to get to Minnesota in a minute here, it's a perfect storm in terms of this kind of turnaround hasn't happened before because we're in a unique place, an unprecedented place in college football with NIL, with the portal, with the money involved. It does change how you can create a roster and build something very quickly.
Yeah, with no guardrails, anything goes, and there's different formulas to get there. Minnesota, they're not going to be one who has the ability to spend. They don't have a Cody Campbell as a booster or a Phil Knight. Their whole deal is developing and trying to retain players that they develop. But there are different ways to get there. It does give hope that for a downtrodden program to get there. I'm not calling Minnesota that. They've been pretty good under PJ Fleck. He's entering his 10th year, but it gives hope. It gives other programs something to shoot for, and it raises expectations too. I would say, it's especially if we see the playoff expand to say 16 or even 24. Then there's going to be some pressure on some teams that, hey, you should probably get there every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned PJ Fleck, and hard to believe this is now a decade of football under him. I remember him coming in, and I can't believe it's already been, this is his 10th season. What do we expect right now from him? Is there any pressure for him to take the next step right now and become that team that's a perennial top 25 and maybe knock on the door of a playoff berth? What can we expect right now in year 10 with PJ Fleck?
Yeah, there's always pressure, and I'm internal pressure too. He wants to do it himself. They had a really nice season in 2019 when they won 11-2. They were on the cusp of winning the Big Ten West. They lost. They had knocked off Penn State to get to 9-0. Then they lost Iowa, and then they lost to Wisconsin. That kept them out of the Big Ten title game. They still finished 10th in the country after beating Auburn in the Outback Bowl. So basically that was their best finish, since the early 60s. Although, and that was in 19, that's kind of getting thrown in the rearview mirror now. And he's had a couple 8-5 seasons in a row. He had a couple 9-4s. Basically, the fan base wants to see that next step. They want to see him, get to a bowl game instead of, say, the Rate Bowl or the Pinstripe Bowl. They want to get to one of those Florida Bowls again. They'd love to see them obviously get in the playoff, see what they can do there. This year's team, they have some parts that look pretty good. I wonder a bit about the schedule and the depth. Can they get 10 wins out of it? I think it'll be pretty tough. Vegas has them at basically 5.5. I think that might be a little low, but they make their money in Vegas by being right a lot of the times too.
Yeah, exactly. Is there? We talked about that already. I think that the schedule is one that is you don't have Ohio State. You do get Michigan at home. You have to travel to Indiana there in late October. You're at Penn State, which we don't know. UCLA feels like they're improved. This is really becoming. We've heard from the SEC, and they say, "Oh my goodness, we're so deep, and every week is going to be a juggernaut." Whatever. You're getting to that point right now, and again, look at just the Big Ten schedule. At Washington is never an easy place to play. Iowa is always prepared under Bob Ferentz. You probably can chalk up a W with the Purdue game. Northwestern maybe as well. Wisconsin feels like they're going to improve. There's some pressure there in Madison to get it done with their coach. It's one where week in, week out, again, there are no gimmies on this schedule.
Yeah, it's become a more difficult schedule. Sometimes a team will get things that line up, and then, okay, you might miss a team here or there. You might get a Penn State when they're not as good as they have been, say like last year. Purdue, the Gophers barely got by Purdue last year, and so they go there this year. So I'm sure that won't be a cakewalk. They've lost to Northwestern a couple times in the last few times they played them. So they have to be on a better game than they were last year when they lost at Wrigley. I think a key point we'll see a little bit early in the season there. Week 2. They have Mississippi State coming up to Minnesota. We'll get a look at how the Gophers compare to an SEC school. I know it's one that hasn't been at the top of the SEC, but still there's a lot of talent there. The quarterback very talented, can run around and throw the ball too. So If the Gophers can get off to a 3-0 start, then then they could have something this season. But that's kind of a pivotal game, that Mississippi State one.
Yeah, and then the opening sit at Washington and then Michigan with the new head coach and all the scandals they've had in Ann Arbor. The first home Big Ten game they're in the schedule. NIL, name, image, likeness dollars, obviously in the House settlement going into effect a year ago, July 1 of 2025. Obviously, there's talk right now. They're trying to get some legislation passed. How has that gone for Minnesota in terms of getting those NIL dollars, getting those sponsors that money outside the program, outside the revenue share? Has Minnesota been able to keep up, or is that kind of impossible because the bar just keeps going up exponentially higher every year?
Yeah, they're not they're not in the top half. They're probably just below the top half, right? And they're around 45, 50%, or just short of that, like 45% of the teams. They're it's always going to be a struggle, unless you have the really big buck donor. I don't believe they have one of those that's like a Phil Knight or anybody like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're soldiering on. They're trying to do what they can. They're trying to get creative with it. I imagine you see Ohio State got a good chunk of money to put the Chase logo on the jerseys, and I'm sure you'll see something like that with Minnesota doing sometime in the near future here. They just put naming rights in their basketball arena, things like that. So they're checking under each cushion to see if there's any change there that can go toward this and help make them competitive.
That was my next question, is in terms of, we saw Ohio State, Illinois, Notre Dame made an announcement with some jersey patches. Will we see those jersey patches, maybe the sponsor on the football field surface, on the basketball court surface? I assume those things are kind of probably in the works there at Minnesota.
Yeah, and you have some of that already too with certain local sponsors. So it's I guess there's only so much you can do on a court, so you got to be a little careful with where it isn't looking like a NASCAR side of a NASCAR type thing. So
yeah, exactly. Talking with Randy Johnson here, the Star Tribune, talking a little Minnesota football. What defines success for this team this year, other than going obviously undefeated and winning it all? What's the bar, do you think? Is it back to a 10-win season? Is that kind of what you're shooting for? Maybe be in the conversation for a playoff bid?
Well, I mean, they would be ecstatic to reach that level. I think. I mean, they're not. It's tough because coaches never will go on the record saying like, okay, what's their record? It's like you have to say, okay, what games you want a coach tell you what games he's going to lose? Yeah. But I think that if they can get to say if they're 8-4 in the regular season, win a bowl game, that's a pretty good year. If they get to 9 regular season wins, I think they'd be pretty happy. I know the fan base is kind of getting tired of 8-5 a little bit. I'm a little careful for what you wish for, because you don't want to go back to the days where you're 5-7 and things like that. It's not Minnesota isn't an easy place to win. It's not a state that's flush with college football talent. It has some, and the Gophers do a good job of keeping the best ones home. Not always, but lately they have. So it's there's ways to improve. They're going about it. I think the fact that Fleck has kept his coaching staff together pretty well, that helps. He's pointed out that they're the only team in the Big Ten that enters the season with a head coach, both coordinators, and a starting quarterback returning. So there's a little stability there. That should help. They have good talent at running back, and if he can stay healthy, so there's, if they would need to knock off, say, a Michigan, say a Penn State, to get to 9 wins, I'm guessing. So and win all the others that they're expected to. It won't be an easy task, but see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it'll be fun to watch them this season. By the way, that game against Mississippi State is one of the CBS games. Really enjoying seeing the Big Ten on that slot, what the SEC had for so many years before. I want to get to basketball very quickly. Nico Medved coming in with his second season right now. How are his prospects? Again, trying to get and retain talent has always been tough for this program as well. What improvements do you think he's going to make here in year 2?
You're talking to the wrong person on that. I do not cover the basketball team.
Okay.
I cover hockey in the winter. I know that he's obviously he's increased the talent level they have here. But I can't tell you a whole lot of specifics about the team right now. I know last week they got a pretty good recruit who chose them over Texas Tech and somebody else I forget, but you'd have to get one of my counterparts on here for that.
That works, and I apologize for that. I do want to mention the baseball coach recently passed away. I know you have been there in the city for a long time. Talk about in terms of just what he meant to not just Minnesota Golden Gophers baseball, but was there for so long. He really was a big part of the community as well. Yeah,
John Anderson was, pretty much, everybody liked the guy. It was always a tough out to beat the Gophers in the Big Ten. They won something like 17 or 18 Big Ten championships. They had a really good year in 2018 where they won the super regional, or they won the regional, got the super regional against Oregon State. Oregon State knocked them out, and Oregon State ended up winning it that year. But it is not easy for a team to win up in Minnesota in college baseball team. It's you're fighting the weather a lot. You do get to play in the Viking Stadium a little bit. That helps you get on the field a bit, but it's not the best dimensions. And but John was able to basically led the fundraising to get a new stadium on campus, and it's a pretty nice one. He'll be missed. He had retired. He had been retired for a year and a half, I believe it was, and he'll be missed. And the thing is, he's not the only one. They also, like 4 months ago, they lost their legendary wrestling coach Jay Robinson, who had led the Gophers to 3 NCAA team championships. So both these guys were pretty much giants in their sports.
Yeah, well, certainly we honor them and all the input that they had and the contributions they had to, again, not just Minnesota, but to college athletics overall. Hey, listen, man, Randy, great to talk with you and get your insights. Sorry about the awkward question there, but I promise next time we talk, we'll talk strictly football when you come on the show again.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Randy Johnson is, once again, he is the Minnesota Gophers beat writer for football and other sports, not basketball, for the Minneapolis Star Tribune. Good to have him here on the show on SportsIQ. Stay with us. Much more to come after this.
Listen, were you forced into getting a solar contract and now you just don't want it anymore? Maybe the solar company misled you. Or is your solar contract buried with hidden fees? Are you not saving the amount of money you thought you would on your energy costs? Don't worry. At the Solar Exit Hotline, we can help you cancel your solar contract, even if the panels are already installed. Our experienced legal team will review your contract and help you cancel it, possibly saving you thousands of dollars. You got to call right now for complete details. So listen, if you're not happy with your solar contract for any reason, we are here to help you cancel it. Call the Solar Exit Hotline now for immediate options to help you exit your solar contract. This call is 100% free. Call 855-227-0286. That's 855-227-0286. Call us right now.
By the way, one other note before we get to continuing our top 25. Did you guys see the Purdue athletic director in his introductory news conference? And he said, we're here to win championships. If you're not here to win a championship, go to Indiana. Brother, you need to look and see what Indiana's done lately. Even in basketball, where Purdue has never won a national championship and Indiana's won a few. There's that guy named McCracken, that guy named Knight, and now there's this guy named Signetti. That didn't age well because it was bad from the start. It stank. Anyway, I digress. Okay, we will hear Indiana's name later on here in producer Tony's second annual preseason top 25. We're up to number 16 right now. Tony, it's been interesting to kind of hear you go through these teams as we finish out our second week here of counting down the number 1, Who you got at 16?
Number 16, we're going to stay right there in the Big Ten, Larry. I'm going with the Iowa Hawkeyes. They are always so consistent. They play hard. Not the flashiest offense you're going to see. If you're a fan of offensive football, don't bother watching Iowa. It's just not going to happen. They play strong defense. They run the football. That's their MO. They would love to get to the college football playoff. Is it going to be this year? Probably not. Those playoffs, they've been so close, Larry, so close. But they are the only Power 4 team from a group of 4 that has yet to make the playoffs. They are the winningest group of 4. Let me correct that. They are the winningest group of 4 program that has not made the playoff yet. Boy, would Iowa fans love to see them finally get over that hump.
Yeah, they got to find some offense, but you're right, though. We've had Tom Kakert, the Iowa Hawkeyes from HawkeyeReport.com on the show several times, right? And even he will admit, you get in the press box that day and you're not sure if the Hawkeyes will score a touchdown. They could win. They may win the game, but it'll be because of a defensive score and 4 field goals,
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to be. You're not going to see a 45-42 shootout if Iowa is in the ballgame. It ain't happening. There's just no way. They were really close last year, Larry. A lot of people don't really remember this or hadn't thought about this. Iowa, 5-point loss to Indiana. Mm-hmm. Iowa, an 18-16 loss to Oregon. Mm-hmm. Iowa, a 5-point loss to USC. Mm-hmm. Iowa, a field goal loss to Iowa State. 4 losses, total of 15 points. This close. Yet so far, imagine if they win 2 or 3, if the ball breaks their way, if the bounces go their way, if things happen. That was a team that could have been in the playoffs. They were still a 9-win team, which, look, let's face it, there are 88 other teams out there in the college football bowl series area that would just love to have a 9-win season.
Oh, absolutely. And they do it so consistently. But to your point, you're right. The thing is that they're not very flashy about it. And so as a result, they don't get the love. But you go through and look, I mean, obviously the COVID year is one that's, you had fewer games, so fewer wins. Even then, they went 6-2 that year. Take that year out, they have missed 8 wins only once, going back to a 4-8 season in 2012. I mean, they are the model of consistency. Preseason, they rarely get love, so I'm glad you're giving them some. They're always underrated, and they always come out later, back when they had divisions, as that team that was always in November was right there in the mix for the division title every single year. Kirk Ferentz has been there literally forever. He took over during the Clinton administration. Back in 1999 was his first season. They were 1-10 that year, replacing legendary Hayden Fry. And we talk about coaches leaving, getting burned out. Kirk Ferentz is a guy, and right now, I mean, he's in his 70s. He's showing no signs of slowing down.
Yeah, they just keep going. And what that team is going to look like. They want to run the football. They want to play it on the pound and ground, and they're going to play good defense. They were great last year on third downs. They had a 65% stop rate on third downs, and even better on fourth down. They led the nation. They allowed just 5 first downs on 21 fourth down attempts. That's incredible. They were the only school under the second only school under 30%. Only Old Dominion joined them in the under 30 crowd, allowing fourth down conversions. So, if that defense can keep doing what they do, now they could help if they would generate a few more turnovers, right? Last year, they forced fumbles 17 times. Guess how many times that Iowa grabbed the football out of those 17 fumbles?
8.
3. Just 3.
Boy. Oh,
they can get the team to put it on the ground. They just can't seem to pick it up. If they figure that part out, they're one of the least penalized teams. They don't shoot themselves in the foot. Get some takeaways. Keep up the defense. Look, I've got them at 16. This is a team that might sneak its way into the playoff.
I think you're right. I mean, the one big game they have is Ohio State at home. They do have to go to Michigan, but they don't have Indiana, don't have Oregon on the schedule, and some other games there. They are very winnable for Iowa. Okay, so Iowa at number 16. We are through 2 weeks of the poll. We'll continue that on Monday. We got to run right now. Thanks so much to our guests. Thanks to you as well. Make this a fantastic weekend. Be nice to somebody. Say hi. Open a door for them. We'll talk to you Monday right here on the Sports IQ.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at SportsIQ LS. We'll see you next time.